This is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast, where CEOs, senior leaders, and C-suite executives share their advice. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes because the best leaders know how to share their ideas concisely and quickly. Let's jump right in. Question number one. In a few sentences, please tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Dr. Frumi Rachel Barr, and I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've started and run 5 entrepreneurial adventures prior to following my passion for equipping CEOs and their teams with the tools that they need in order to grow safely. I work with companies of all sizes to create greater alignment, effectiveness, and accountability in order to gain traction. I focus on culture first to create an environment that allows for the right decisions to be made regarding their vision, their culture, their strategy, metrics, execution, and cash management. I'm also the author of A CEO's Secret Weapon, How to Accelerate Success, which has a foreword by Simon Sinek, who's well known for Start With Why. And my book is about using your why as the engine to overcome the challenges that most CEOs and businesses face.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have a lot of great experience to pull from to share with us today. I'm excited to hear about all that kind of eclectic background. I would imagine that really goes to inform the work that you do today.
It sure does.
So I'm curious, as you think about, leading people through change, and life has given us a lot of change over the last year. I can imagine that most people are experiencing that. What would you say is the best thing about leading people through that change?
I would say that the best part of leading people through change is getting to the finish line successfully. It's actually the moment when you realize that you aren't needed anymore. It's kind of a bittersweet moment. I worked with an incredible team a few years ago. It was 100-plus-year-old company, and there were some individuals in the company who were really resistant to change, and the team wasn't cohesive at that point. So one of the hardest things to do is to change the culture of a team like that, because it took 100 years to get there. It doesn't change overnight. So it's like turning a cruise liner compared to a motorboat. And the wonderful moment was when they were able to think like a team and not a number of siloed units to plan a budget together. And that's when I knew I was done. So it's
That's
crossing that
beautiful.
finish line.
Yeah, I love that. And I like this idea of, when you're no longer needed. I can appreciate that is kind of a bittersweet moment when you think to yourself, oh, I've worked myself out of a job.
That's right. And that's the hard part, because you have to know when that time has come.
Absolutely. So, as you think about that, then what piece of advice would you give to other leaders about implementing change?
I would say to know when it's time to change and embrace the opportunity that thinking of change offers. For example, for the leaders who are waiting for the end of the pandemic, they're going to be left behind
Hmm.
by those who recognize that they have to prepare for a next normal and what needs to happen, and they're willing to make the changes necessary. Like the restaurants who've been shut down and have to think about, well, maybe now I could become a commissary for other restaurants that want to offer curbside service, that kind of thing. It's the people who stepped out right away who are actually doing really well right now.
So, feel the fear and do it anyway, is kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, exactly.
So I hear from other leaders that keeping teams engaged remotely has been a challenge, that they've been struggling with the lack of kind of the walk by leadership that they used to benefit from before, or overhearing people on the phone or at the water cooler. I'm curious, what's been your experience with that? And do you have any tips that you can share with the audience on how to address it?
So I happen to be the co-founder of a pet technology company. We've been very successful at creating a remote culture over the past 4 years. And the way we've done it is we're very intentional about it. We begin every single all hands meeting by sharing our core values. In fact, if anyone ever comes late to a meeting, they have to say all the core values. Otherwise, we take turns. And in this way, we also share a highlight of our week. Like I spent the weekend in my car just because I had to get out of my apartment. And that way we actually become friends. So the key is to be intentional and consistent in our communication. We also measure our team's cohesiveness using Pat Lencioni's work, which is the 5 cohesive behaviors of a team. That's powered by Everything Disc. So we're very intentional, and we've been very successful as a remote team. As long as everyone on the team knows how they contribute to the success of the company and are managing their priorities, then you have a winning team. But you have to be intentional.
Intentional, and I like how you talk about each individual being aligned to the greater mission, as well as the core values. It's not, not just leadership, but it's everybody that needs to feel that alignment.
Exactly.
So what daily practice is most important to you as a leader?
So I find that if I combine two practices, so one is continuous learning. I read a lot, as I mentioned to you before we started talking, that I've written 160 book summaries on all kinds of business books. So I combine that with exercise. When I used to be able to go to the gym, I would actually read on the Precor.
Mhm.
And so I would read and exercise at the same time. And by tying the two together, I'm sure that I get them done. So now what I do, I actually walk and listen to a book every single day. So I am walking between 35 and 40 miles a week listening to books. And that's the practice that provides knowledge to the leaders that I work with, my own continuous learning, and I'm physically fit.
I
That's my
love
best
that.
practice.
Layer your activities together might be an interesting approach to getting it all done.
That's right.
So, what other successful business leaders like yourself should be on the show? In other words, who else should we be paying attention to? Who else is out there influencing you?
So I have a client who I absolutely adore. His name is Ned Shout, and he's my avatar. So he's like my perfect client. And why is because he's also a serial entrepreneur. He's running 3 different businesses at the same time.
Wow.
So he has a podcast that talks about fatherhood, and he attracts some very interesting people to that. He's just bought a software company to allow benefits people to mine for new clients. And he also has a benefits company himself where he has 8 employees. So what I've done with him is I've taught him how to grow successfully. So I teach him in a series of lessons. Then he goes off and works with his team, comes back and works with me again. And I just love doing that kind of work. I love the teaching and I love his learning and watching him grow successfully. So I would recommend him very highly as someone you should speak to.
Well, he sounds like somebody that's really, kind of embracing that whole Kaizen that you're talking about, that constant and never ending improvement. And it's interesting as you work with, entrepreneurs who recognize that they don't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room, right? That they can leverage the expertise of those around them to rising tides raise all ships.
That's right.
That's awesome. I appreciate that perspective. Well, Dr. Frumi, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on the show, and I love your insights. I'm curious if somebody wanted to reach out and introduce themselves, how might they find you?
Well, they could find me at my website or through an email address. So it's Dr. Frumi at scaleupadvisors.com or .biz, excuse me. Dr. Frumi at scaleupadvisors.biz.
That's
So
wonderful.
give you a clue into my website too.
Absolutely. And we'll put that in the link in the description below so the
Sure.
audience knows how to find you. My guess is they could find you on LinkedIn and all of your great books and all of your great writings and things like that. If nothing else, they should follow you so they can stay in touch with that.
That would be awesome. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And hopefully you'll come back and join us again soon.
Thank you.
Well, this is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast. For more ideas and insights, please do go check us out at www.concilioteam.com. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.